Soipan Tuya. Good to see you, Madam CS.
Good to see you again, Jeff.
I always see you when we're planting trees.
It's a good time to see people.
Looking lovely in red.
Thank you.
Tell me something. Who came up with this? Because today is Wednesday and the public holiday is Friday.
Yes.
That gives us 2 days. And, okay, we're going to be commemorating all the victims of the floods.
Yes.
God rest their souls. And then we're going to be planting trees. Are we ready for that in 2 days?
Yes, we are, Jeff. One is to say that, first of all, is really to stand in passing a message of condolence to all Kenyans that have lost loved ones. It is a very sad situation we are in, where we have lost close to 240 lives so far. This tree growing holiday, one is to stand in solidarity with the Kenyans that have lost loved ones and those that are suffering in many forms. We have displaced Kenyans, we have those that have lost property, those that are injured. And it's really a time to stop back as a country and think about these Kenyans that are suffering. And also that I think by and large, each and every one of us has been affected by this crisis that we find ourselves in. In terms of preparedness, for the Ministry of Environment, tree growing during the rainy seasons is an ongoing exercise. So we have been doing it all through since the beginning of the rainy season. But of course, with the escalation of precipitation across the country, we have had to slow down because really there has literally been no space to grow trees. So we had to stop. And you have also noticed that our meteorological department, which is under my ministry, has been very active in offering forecasts and advisories throughout this rainy period, really to just help Kenyans in terms of early warning and guide Kenyans to avoid dangerous situations across
Speaking of meteorological department, yes, they have been predicting what was coming. We knew what was coming, and yet we didn't respond enough. It seems like we're always reactive rather than proactive.
I would not say that, Jeff. What I would say is that the magnitude of the weather extremes we are facing, I don't think anybody would ever have been prepared for what we are seeing. If you talk to Kenyans all over, I have had occasion to go to different parts of the country supporting colleagues in the special programs and the emergency response. I mean, these are unprecedented times. Some parts of this country have never seen floods before. So in terms of preparedness, I think it would be unfair for anybody to say that anyone would have been properly prepared for such a situation. And that brings us to the realization that we are really living in a state of emergency with regard to the climate crisis that we are faced with, not just as Kenya, as Africa and the globe.
And when you say
large.
State of emergency, why didn't we declare the floods a state of emergency?
When I say a state of emergency, it is not in the literal sense of the state of emergency, as you know, Jeff. It is the catastrophic levels that the climate crisis is taking us to in terms of the warming of the globe. Unfortunately, scientists have told us this over and again, that the rate at which our globe is warming is at catastrophic levels. I don't know which other word to use. Unfortunately, it calls for global action. It's not for Kenya only.
Yeah.
It is a global space. It is not an effect that is caused by one country in some corner. It is global. It requires a global action. Unfortunately, we are not doing enough as a global community, again, because, Jeff, this is a responsibility that everyone has to take. And we have to go back You know, we have people who have been skeptical about the climate change discourse that is happening across the globe. But we are at a point where no one needs convincing anymore that climate change is real. And we know the cause of climate change. It is about our emissions. And we know that we know the levels of emissions that are coming from the more developed countries, the level of emissions that are coming from the global south. For us in Africa, we are only contributing 4% to the global warming. The developed countries are contributing close to 80%. Yeah. And we have been involved in the space of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change for close to 30 years now, where we have discussions going on in the COPs. We are going to COP 29 now this year. And the story has been, how do we reduce emissions, which are contributing to the global climate change crisis? And we therefore cannot maybe point fingers at this level to say that, you know, someone should have done something differently. It is really a big thing. And that is why we have been very deliberate and intentional in making climate action a key priority of government, because now it's a life and death. Absolutely. As we have seen. Madam CS, I want to talk more about that in a little short while. I'm going to go ahead with the news, but I want to talk about what's happening on Friday. What exactly is happening? So back to your question on preparedness. Yes. Yes. Hold that thought. Hold that thought. We'll come back to that, Madam CS. We've got Soipan Tuya, the Cabinet Secretary for Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, talking about the way forward. There's going to be a tree planting across the country this coming Friday, May the 10th. It is a public holiday. If you didn't know, now you know. Also commemorating all the deaths of those affected by the floods. Let's carry on. In the meantime, Azimio leaders are now accusing the Kenya Kwanza administration of not giving the floods around the country the attention that the crisis deserves. Let's get more from our very own Stephen Litto.
We also note President Ruto recently announced in Mathare that the households affected by the floods will each receive 10,000 shillings, with 1 billion already set aside. Again, this is a case of too little, too little, too late. For the families who have lost everything, such allocations are too little to start afresh. We demand that the government increase the financial support to at least 100,000 shillings per family and immediately launch an emergency aid appeal for all the flood victims in Kenya. Red Cross projects that the flood situation could need at least 7 billion shillings.
All right, some good news on the doctor strike. Listen to this. The Kenya Medical Pharmacists and Dentists Union, the KMPDU, has called off their nationwide strike that has lasted, yes, you guessed it, 56 days after signing a return-to-work formula with the government. Let's get more from our very own Emily Jabet.
After weeks on the streets, a number of court appearances and several meetings that failed, the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union finally came to an agreement with the government to call off the strike.
We signed this particular return-to-work formula today so that it can pave way for the doctors to resume work within 24 hours from now. And that means the strike that began on 13th of March 2024 has been called off.
Last night, we left the Ministry of Health at 3 a.m. And the deal breaker was, is this a deal for execution or just for signing? And we agreed that it was a deal for execution. This strike has given us an opportunity to introspect and look inwards to see what can be done better for health workers in this country.
The implementation of what we have agreed upon is the beginning of the journey to make sure that we never have any more of this and call for disagreements that lead to strike.
Among the issues that have been agreed upon is the payment of the outstanding basic salary arrears by the national government to doctors, where KMPDU is required to provide a list of doctors with outstanding salary arrears in 15 days from today. The 3.5 billion Kenya shillings arrears accrued by the county government in salary arrears will be settled by way of a conditional grant in 5 or 3 years, subject to consultation between both parties, effective 1st July this year. The government has committed to harmonize terms of service within 90 days in accordance with existing legal framework. On postgraduate studies for doctors, the national government shall immediately settle all outstanding fees incurred by government-sponsored registrars postgraduates from the year 2018